by now you've heard probably from multiple legit sources, whether it's Shams, Woj, whomever, that a lot of people are expecting this to be one of the more crazy NBA off seasons we've ever seen. When you consider the new CBA, all the rules, and where you have so many teams that are looking to make a shuffle or adjust headed into next season. And one of the reports here over the last 48 hours is Danny Ainge and the Utah Jazz are finally really open for business, right? Ainge is notorious for driving a hard bargain, being stubborn, and Utah has compiled some interesting talent, some interesting players, and then just not really been willing to deal with anybody. I'm not really sure what their big picture strategy is. I think it changed once they didn't land Cooper Flagg. I think that changed the way they looked at things moving forward. So I thought we would go over this Jazz roster where it sounds like everyone is made available now. But before we do that, I've got one question for you, because another report that's just been swirling around now for a while is, hey, the Suns are aggressively looking to trade Kevin Durant. It's going to happen before the draft, and they want to make it happen, and, this and that, right? And I get it. Miami, San Antonio, there's Houston. There's various teams that are atop the list and where people think he's going to go. But we also know that the Warriors, before the Butler deal, tried to get Kevin Durant. And then he made some sort of excuse up of, I just didn't want to be traded in the middle of the year. I mean, can you take KD for his word? I don't know. But what I wanted to ask y'all was, hypothetically, would you trade Jimmy for KD now? Just because it was the Suns that initially wanted Jimmy. Remember how that worked. We wanted KD. The trade, from what I understand, was going to be KD coming to Golden State, Jimmy going to Phoenix in a 3-team deal. So would you make that deal now? And KD's like, yeah, all right, it's the offseason and let's make it happen. I'm not sure I would. I can't believe I'm saying this, because at the time, at the deadline, I think we would have all preferred KD over Jimmy. But seeing as though how Jimmy has integrated himself into this Golden State system, the way he's put the battery in the back of the young players, how he gets along with Steph, Draymond, and Steve, KD may have a higher ceiling on what the season could look like and what the team could be, but I think the floor is way lower with KD. Draymond, I don't have to explain it to you, right? But the Draymond, the Kerr dynamic and everything, and like, what are the chances of 30 games in, KD goes silent and he's just cranky, And hey, Jimmy, to be fair to KD, Jimmy, we've seen that type of thing happen with him as well. But right now, I don't think I'd make that trade. I think I'm more intrigued with the intangibles that Jimmy brings, and how, I think he's a little more dynamic as far as just what you can do around him. Where KD, you're getting an elite bucket getter and you know what you're getting. But yeah, let me know in the comments if you'd make that swap now. All right, let's talk about this Jazz team. Lauri Markkanen, we've been talking about him for about 2 years now. He's at $46 million per now that they've given him the extension. And the only real feasible way I see to acquire him would be, you got to throw Draymond's contract in there. When you look at our contracts, Draymond would have to be involved. Now, do you want to make the deal? The other thing that would probably have to happen is you re-sign Kuminga and then wait till the deadline so you can take back the entire contract that you send out with Kuminga. But Lauri, listen, we've all talked about it. Yes, it would be a fit, but now that he's at that big number, I think it's far more difficult. John Collins talked about in the last Big Man video, and my thoughts on him. The 3-ball came back, an elite rebounder, an elite vertical spacer. He would be a fit. He's at what, $26 million? You'd have to get creative in a sign and trade with Looney and or GP2. Would they want those guys in Utah? Draft picks would have to be involved, but not impossible. So those are the two biggest names in Utah, forwards, bigger players that, yeah, it could happen, but you're going to have to get creative with the contracts. Jordan Clarkson, 32 years old and still a walking bucket. They've loved him in Utah. It's right. It's been a funny fit for him in Utah because when he first came there, I believe it was from the Cleveland deal, right? Was Sexton part of that? And it was like, oh, we'll see, Clarkson, Utah, it doesn't seem like a fit. And they've really embraced him. And he's had a good few years there now. He's not as efficient as you'd like him to be. But I also think you have to look at the context of the situation. There's a lot of nights where it's just like, hey, put him up. We need some scoring, get loose. I think that he could be more efficient on a better team. But he's not just a guy that can create his own shot. He's a guy that can take over a game, right? When he's hot, it's a third quarter opens up. He can give you 18 points and flip a game. And he's essentially, to me, an older Jordan Poole at this point. Kind of erratic, right? It doesn't defend how you'd want him to, but when he gets going, like he can give you huge momentum swings and can be a shot creator for this Warriors team that clearly needs another shot creator. So what would that take if they're finally willing to part with this guy who they've really liked him there? Mo and Gee, Moses Moody and Gee for Jordan Clarkson, maybe some second round picks or something like that. They get Moses and it fits their timeline. Gee, two young guys. These Mo and Gee, they're just contracts that are movable right now, and they're young players that can contribute. So it's not like I'm jumping to give them up, but it's kind of one of the only options. And you bring back, a guy, a third guard that fits the bill for what the Warriors need in shot creation and scoring. And 32, he's been in the league a long time, but his body type and the way he plays, I think he's still kind of at the tail end of his prime. He's got some good years left. Walker Kessler. It's a name I forgot to bring up, I think, in that last big man video. 23 years old, 11 points per game, 12 boards, and 2.5 blocks. Now, the big men are back, right? And Walker Kessler is an elite rim protector. They list him at 7 foot. The listings, by my understandings in today's league, remember they started to do it barefoot without shoes on. So 7 foot barefoot, he's probably like 7'2" or so in shoes, big wingspan. And, some of rim protection is timing and feel, which he has, right? He understands that he's a true 7-footer, but he has such a big standing reach that he doesn't really have to jump to contest shots. And so what that does is it makes up for a lack of foot speed. He doesn't have to load up. When he rotates over, he doesn't have to load up to jump to block a shot. He just slides over and stands tall. And that alone is super effective in protecting the rim. He can get up and block some shots, rebounds well, runs the floor. Look, there's going to be a lot of teams that are going to put a bid in for Walker Kessler. The Lakers, and again, the big men are back in the NBA. And conceptually for the Warriors, you put him in the middle of a zone with Jimmy and Draymond on the back line flying around to the corners, and you could have yourself an elite defense. Now, he doesn't necessarily space the floor, but in theory, he could turn us into, he could take the defense to the next level and solve, I won't say all of, but most of the size issues. He is that guy. And so what would it cost to get Kessler? If you want to be optimistic, if you want to be like, hey, you never know, maybe there's, not as many teams bidding as you would think. Could you send them Gee, Trace, and a first-round pick? Maybe an unprotected first? The pick stipulations and how many picks you want to do. Would they want Quentin Post instead? Maybe. I'd hate to give up QP. I think he's such a good fit for the team. But a couple young players and some draft picks. Would you give up Pods? Remember, we wouldn't give him up for Laurie. Why are you going to give it up for this guy? So, I'm just saying, if the bidding gets higher and higher here, you'd imagine they ask for Pods, and it kind of feels like a fair trade. Two young guys, obviously opposite positions, but at the same spot in their career with the trajectory going up and look like they're going to hold value moving forward in this league. I don't know. I know a lot of you that are Pods haters are going to say, well, of course, right? But it might cost Pods and a pick or something like that to get Kessler, But at the same time, I've already tried to sell you on his value. And again, the zones are back, the big men are back, and he's a young guy that I think another part of the value is, and I don't want to get too, this is being presumptuous, but once he does have to be extended the next season, I don't think it'll, break the bank. He's going to be a guy that you can probably get on a value contract long term. But so would Pods, I think. We'll see. I don't know. Pods wants to be an Olympian. But yeah, I think everybody is going to be interested in Walker Kessler. And how much are you willing to give up? Underdog, are y'all playing the extender through these finals? We've got game 3 tonight in Indiana. Are they going to bounce back? I think Indiana's defense can be a lot better. If you watched game 2, they just didn't bring the intensity on their rotations and closeouts, and then it just snowballed. And here we are 1-1. But you can use the link in the description and use the code Alchemy to get a 50% bonus on your first deposit up to 1,000 credits. They're constantly running boosts and specials. And I've been hitting on my picks. Keep an eye out for my picks, whether it's a YouTube post or on Twitter. My picks for tonight, I'm trying to keep it rolling here. Jalen Williams, higher than 1.5 threes, and Obi Toppin, higher than 1.5 threes. One thing that I think Indiana figured out against this Thunder defense was like Obi is used to kind of operating out of that corner, driving baseline, and he has such a bounce. He can hang in the air and make plays and decisions. And they figured out pretty quickly, like, oh, you can't do that against this defense. That's a coffin corner. You're going to get trapped, and their rotations, you can't make that skip pass. And that's why you saw those 5 threes. Mainly in the second half of that game 1, they were like, no, but you got to shoot that in that corner. You can't play with the ball there. So I expect him to continue to shoot the 3, do it aggressively, and do it better at home in Indiana. J-Dub, the way they're building the wall on SGA, he's going to get some open looks, and I think he's going to knock them down. That's underdog. All right, back to this Utah roster here. Collin Sexton is 26 years old, 18 points a game. His shooting splits are kind of crazy. Like I was kind of shocked when I looked it up. 48, 40, and 86. Like he's damn near 50, 40, 90. And then you watch how aggressive he plays. It's impressive, right? Like he is a legit create his own shot scorer in the prime of his career. The issue is the brother's a little bit off, right? He's a little weird, right? The brother's off. And so I would have some concerns bringing him into the locker room. Honestly, he's so aggressive with just his playing style, his personality, and, Jimmy, Draymond. Now, maybe Steph, Jimmy, Draymond, Steve, like they're at this point in their career here where they're such OGs that they can just let him be him. And they just understand like, Collin, he on one. Like his motor, that's how because he is that way, it seems like all the time. So maybe it's not, you don't take it personally, but I'd be a little concerned with his personality and just how aggressive he is. You're not bringing a guy in, like you look at Markkanen and it's like, oh, he's just going to like fit into the locker room and to the team and kind of just be a guy in there. Sexton is a big personality, a big aggressive guy that has the ball. And so you're playing with that. But If it does fit, again, you're bringing in a two-way player because he does defend as well. Almost 50, 40, 90, 18 points a game at 26 years old. Like that's kind of what the doctor ordered, right? Like so, again, I'm sure there's going to be quite a few bidders for Collin Sexton, Moses and Buddy, in a pick. I know that most of us were on Buddy Hield for most of the season in his up and down play, and he played too much. But at the end of the day, when you look back at his season in its entirety, and especially once Jimmy arrived, you don't really want to give up Buddy, right? Like Buddy feels like he's going to be a part of this moving forward. But, again, I bring up Sexton in the locker room fit. You're sending out Moses and Buddy, two of the better locker room fits that we have right now. And maybe you got to give up a pick. I don't know. You got it. These are the risks. These are the risks and the swings that you have to calculate. What's the ceiling on Sexton? Because he could be, you imagine him in that Minnesota series, that changes things. So I'm intrigued with him, but I'm a little wary of the locker room fit. I've got 2 more names for you on this Utah roster. KJ Martin. Kenyon, is that Kenyon Martin's son? It is. Yeah, KJ. He was in Houston, Clippers, Philadelphia. He's bounced around. He hasn't really found a home, but he is a big wing defender. He would be a GP2 replacement, and he's 26 years old, 6'6", jumps out of the gym. You know, GP2 is a perfect comp for him, but he's a little bit bigger. You know, suspect shooter offensively, but cuts, and a really good on-ball defender. He's at $8 million per. Could you do Flipkowski? Remember the Duke kid who got swooped by the Mormon? That's a story for another time. But KJ Martin and Flipkowski. So now you're getting a wing defender as well as a young stretch big for Moses and some second-round picks. Right? Obviously, Ainge and Utah have to like Moses and think the change of scenery. I think that might be a good change of scenery for Mo. But part of the reason why I'm throwing Moses into so many of these trades is that I'm not trying to hate on him, even though he did have a really rough playoffs. It's that he's at that $11 million contract. He's like one of the only mid-sized contracts that we can move. It's not like I'm hunting to get rid of Moses. It's just when you start to play in the trade machine, he's one of the only mid-sized contracts that allows you to make moves. But I like KJ Martin and Flipkowski. You know, at the power forward spot, he has the elbow jumper, shoots the three. Like he's a gifted offensive stretch big that would slot in there alongside Jimmy and Draymond for some minutes. So Utah has a lot of guys that would fit. Keontae George, I don't know, you know, you talk about a version of Jordan Poole as well. But there are a lot of possibilities when you look at this Utah roster. I know the focus is on Markkanen and Collins. But, you know, the reality is some of these other players might make more sense, and I think are certainly more feasible in realistic deals. Hit that like, share, and subscribe. I'm out, y'all.